and I won't back down. Hey, baby, there ain't no easy way out.
Hey everybody, thanks so much for joining us right here on The Right View. Tonight, we are joined by political commentator Sabrina Kosmas, as well as the Federalist Brianna Lyman. Ladies, we got some fires out in California. It is a horrific situation. And, you know, I have talked to so many of my friends who live out there. Some of them lost everything. Some of them don't have a home. We've heard the horror stories about how people lost their insurance a year or two ago. They have no coverage whatsoever. So their houses have burned to the ground. They have nothing to their name, and they have no way to support themselves to rebuild after these fires. It is absolutely terrible. And it is obviously the worst fire situation that California's ever seen. The question I think a lot of people have, Brianna, is why did this happen? Why wasn't anybody prepared? Why weren't there, ample areas where you had fire hydrants and enough water? Why is it the dams were dry? Why is it the water from the snowmelt in Canada was diverted into the ocean instead of down to the LA area? Gavin Newsom eliminated $101 million from wildfire and forest resilience programs, which obviously is problematic. We heard that Karen Bass cut $17 million from the LAFD budget. There are calls for her resignation. There are people all over the place who are very frustrated and who have lost literally everything to their name. So, Brianna, I just am curious, do you think we will ever see someone held accountable based on what feels like some negligence that led to the situation out there in California?
No, they want to try and first blame this on climate change. Bernie Sanders, some members of the squad have done that. Obviously, we know this has nothing to do with climate change. And like you said, it has everything to do with ineffective governance. And Gavin Newsom has recently put out an invite for the future president to come and tour what happened. And I have to be honest, to me, that seems like he wants President-elect Donald Trump to come there because he wants to deflect attention away from him and onto Donald Trump, because he knows that the propaganda press is very good at finding a way to blame Donald Trump. But Donald Trump has been consistent for the better part of 8 years, and that California, for example, needs to clean out the brush in their forest. And guess what they didn't do? Clean out the brush. In 2014, California voters approved Proposition 1, which put money aside to create more reservoirs. Guess how many of those were built as of 2022? 0. And so Gavin Newsom and Karen Bass can try and pretend like there's no politics involved here. But a lot of this, they never took proactive measures because they were concerned about politics. They were concerned about DEI politics. They were concerned about giving money and sending supplies over to Ukraine. They weren't concerned about California voters. So there needs to be some level of accountability. And I think you made a great point in your intro. There are people who lost everything, and not wealthy people who have money to rebuild. People who got these houses handed down from their families. People who bought in 56 years ago when they could afford it. They're not going to be able to have that same ease to afford and rebuild that like others were. And so I think they might make a different voting change, hold someone accountable for the fact that they lost everything, and they're not going to get that back, unfortunately.
Yeah, I mean, people not only have lost everything, people have lost their lives out there, Sabrina. It's just horrific to see. And Brianna, I'm glad you brought up the climate change, folks. That's always, a big talking point for a lot of people on the left. Nicole Shanahan, who was RFK Jr.'s running mate, had this to say. I thought this was a very interesting post on X. She said, "For all of you climate change doomsdayers, California has been out of a drought since 2022. We've seen record rainfall, yet the California Department of Water Resources, big city mayors, and the governor have failed to use that water to increase ground hydration and strengthen emergency fire services. They look the other way despite warnings from universities, fire departments, farmers, and consultants offering actionable plans." It's mind-boggling negligence. I agree with that totally. I posted a video on my social media showing one of those giant planes that literally dips down into the Pacific Ocean. They have like this well they can fill up. It dives down. It's got like a mouth that takes in the water. And then they can fly it over these areas and dump the water. Those planes, Sabrina, are from guess where? Not from California. They are from Canada. And thank you to our friends in Canada for loaning us these planes here in America. But you think about the cost of this wildfire. I mean, right now it's estimated, I think the last I saw was $150 billion. That's obviously going to grow. This is just what we know right now. Let's say that it's $250 billion worth of damage that is caused by this wildfire. What do those planes cost? I don't know, $20 million a piece or something along those lines. Could Governor Newsom not have had some foresight and said, hey, maybe we want to get some of these planes on standby. Maybe we want to buy a couple of these for California, keep them ready to go so that we're not scrambling around last minute. I mean, that combined with the ineffective forest management, which don't forget, Donald Trump famously walked with Gavin Newsom 8 years ago, or however many years ago it was now, 7 years ago, said to him and was mocked, by the way, when he said this, that you need to clean up all of the brush. You need to get all the tinder, that it literally becomes tender on the ground, cleaned up so that you don't have these problems with the wildfires. Turns out Donald Trump was right again. But I look at the videos of these planes, and if I were a resident of California, I would be absolutely outraged that there was almost no planning, it feels like, for any of this, and they're scrambling around last minute to get, planes in and to do anything they can. You got to stay on top of these things, Sabrina.
Yeah, I completely agree. First off, thanks so much for having me, because if there's anything I'm a subject matter expert on, it is Governor Newsom's failure as a governor of California. As someone who fled the state just 2 years ago, and I love California. I know it has its problems, but it is home. So many of my loved ones and friends back home have been immensely affected by this fire. Some have lost their homes. It is heartbreaking to watch, especially because as much as I do not want to politicize tragedies, some tragedies like this are inherently political. And so much of this could have been prevented had people like Gavin Newsom and Karen Bass done the bare minimum at their jobs. As you said, 24 people have died at this point, over 100, probably around an estimated 150 billion in damage. And people laughed at President Trump for going on Joe Rogan just 3 months ago and warning about the mismanagement of the water reservoirs in California. I mean, he even commented on the fact that about 95% of the record-breaking rainfall that had happened from us being out, or I say us, by California being out of a drought for 2 years, that was funneled straight into the ocean, that could have been filling these reservoirs, like the Santa Ynez Reservoir, where 117 gallons of water storage was not there. And
it's dry. If you look at a photo of that reservoir, it is dry. That feeds it directly into Los Angeles. And that, I mean, what? How on earth is that even possible,
and
Sabrina?
It's been dry for.
Yeah. It's absolutely outrageous.
Because the state of California was too concerned with DEI hiring, putting tampons in bathrooms, rather than actually keeping their citizens safe.
It is, it's sorry,
there's a little delay.
Oh, no, you're good. Listen, I just, I can't believe that things have gotten this out of control. There's this petition, by the way, I think over 60,000 people have signed it to kick Karen Bass out of her position as mayor. They want to get her out. They want her, done and move somebody in who's actually going to be an effective leader for Los Angeles. You mentioned, Brianna, the arsonist who was an illegal immigrant that we at least saw setting some fire. There was some video of it. Some people are reporting that arson may be to blame for the start of this horrific fire situation out in California. But just to go back to that illegal immigrant, give me your take on things, because anybody doing anything wrong should be held accountable. It seems like, except if you live in a sanctuary state like California, because what happens to the guy who is literally on video committing arson?
Yeah, and I think the individual that I saw, there may be more. I think he was found that he had something with him, like a fire torch or a blowtorch, something along those lines, but the police did not charge him with arson yet. They got him for something else, and there's just some kind of tangential connection there. But I think it does speak to the larger point here, is when you talk about illegal immigrants, look, California has spent millions of dollars on illegal immigrants over the past few years. Those millions of dollars could have been spent being proactive to prevent situations where a fire can spread so rapidly like this, because the fire trucks ran out of water. There's no water available. They were diverting water to protect fish instead of their people and homes and businesses. So there is definitely a way to look at this and say California has wasted taxpayers' money. And unfortunately, these taxpayers have nothing now to show for it, including their very own homes.
Yeah, it is so sad. I I constantly think about people out there, and I messaged one of my friends who I saw, she posted on social media, she lost everything. She has no home left. She has 2 kids. It's so tragic. It took her a couple of days to write me back because she's just so overwhelmed with everything going on out there. But I do think that sometimes it requires a situation like this, maybe to wake people up. And I would argue, people are saying, oh, keep politics out of it. I'm not trying to politicize anything. What I am going to say is that bad policies and bad leadership contributed to the disastrous situation in California. There is no other way to look at it. Your leaders failed you out there. So I hope people are really looking long and hard at possibly making some changes for their own sake, for the sake of the future of California, their families, all of it. I believe there are a lot of people who are probably going to move out. They're done with California. I've heard that from several people. They're leaving. They're done. They're going to leave California. They can't take it anymore. They're probably going to move to places like Texas and Florida, which a lot of people have already done. But I'm going to predict right now that the next governor of California will be a Republican. I think people maybe are going to wake up a little bit after this and see the failures that the people in charge out there have contributed to. And look, no one's suggesting that a fire is an easy thing to deal with, but you do have to have things set up properly so that, God forbid, you find yourself in these situations, you don't make these epic mistakes like having entire reservoirs dry and not being prepared with planes or whatever it is. It's insane. It's totally insane. I will say someone who seems to have made a bit of a shift politically, and we don't really know, Sabrina, why per se he's done it, is Mark Zuckerberg. He visited Mar-a-Lago. He seems to have changed his tune on quite a bit. A big donation from Meta to the inauguration. He has finally really blown things up for folks on the left. Their heads are exploding. They're in full meltdown because he announced an end to fact checkers on Facebook and Instagram. I love to see this sort of thing happen. I am slightly skeptical of it. He went on Joe Rogan and talked about how he was pressured extensively via the Biden administration, especially during COVID, to censor people, to censor especially anything that had to do with COVID or Donald Trump related, even if those things were true. What do you make, Sabrina, of this shift that we've seen from Mark Zuckerberg?
While I love seeing this cultural shift, I am very skeptical as well. I would love to know Mark Zuckerberg, or as I'd like to call him, Chad Zuckerberg, now that he has grown out his hair, he's wearing it is a new look. Boats with his patriotic flag and his oversized t-shirts and Cuban links. I am very skeptical because unfortunately the damage has already been done with the censorship he has done, especially when it came to the vaccines, to COVID-19, to lockdowns. So many lives have been ruined by those lockdowns and by, misinformation about the vaccine and potential side effects. So I am very skeptical now that there is this cultural shift. When I see these people who were so far on one direction just 4 years ago, now jumping to this side, I'm a little skeptical because I'm wondering what his real intention is. And if Kamala had won, would he be in the same position?
That is a good question. I will say, Brianna, I'm excited that there are no more tampons in the men's room at the Meta offices. So that's a step in the right direction.
Yeah, it's crazy that we even have to talk about that and give accolades to Mark Zuckerberg or Meta. And I mean, honestly, even states across the country when they do stuff that's normal, for doing stuff that's normal. I want to go back to the Mark Zuckerberg thing, though. What's interesting is he said in his Joe Rogan episode last week that he doesn't know if what the government was doing was legal. That is the same assertion or the same conclusion that the Fifth Circuit drew, but that is not the conclusion that our Supreme Court drew in Murphy v. Missouri, where they essentially gave the federal government the green light to continue their censorship operations in collusion with big tech. And it's really just a gut punch to every single American that was silenced, that you have Mark Zuckerberg sitting there pretending like he was also a victim of the government when he deliberately worked hand in hand with them to censor factually true but politically inconvenient information. And the Supreme Court, led by Amy Coney Barrett in this decision, squandered an opportunity to protect our First Amendment rights to something that Mark Zuckerberg is now admitting happened. That is such an insult to the American people and to the First Amendment.
MyPillow is excited to announce that their Christmas extravaganza is finally here. Get this season's flannel sheets for as low as $59.98. They won't last long, so get them while you can. Their famous My Slippers, these haven't been on sale for over a year and are regularly priced at $119.98, but for a limited time are now only $59.98. And their 6-pack towel sets are back in stock with extremely limited quantities, only $29.98. With hundreds of MyPillow products, there's something for everyone on your Christmas list, from bathrobes, duvets, quilts, down comforters, and so much more. But that's not all. They're extending their 60-day money-back guarantee until March 1st, 2025. Plus, all orders over $75 or more ship absolutely free. Go to mypillow.com or call 800-624-3945 and be sure to use promo code TRUMP to save on all MyPillow products. That's promo code TRUMP. This is the kind of thing, though, that I think I agree with you. That's crazy, and it's the whole thing. While it was happening, we all felt it. Like, we were just like, "What is happening here?" I'm posting something. I would post like a photo of my kids or something, and it would get censored, probably because their last name is Trump. But while all this was going on, it was a very uncomfortable, very dark time in our country's history, and I'm glad we're on the other side of it, but I do hope that some serious lessons have been learned here. And I'm all about forgiving, but I'm also about never forgetting. And I hope we never forget this. And I hope we get to really the bottom of what happened here. And I do think it's going to start on January 20th. I think the Biden administration knows this. I think they know the things they did were wrong. I mean, obviously, Zuckerberg didn't have to go along with it, but this is what he said. He said, I think that those were basically these two events, meaning Trump and COVID, where for the first time, we just faced this massive, massive institutional pressure to basically start censoring content on ideological grounds. I mean, this is un-American, what happened in 2021. And I mean, it really still has kind of continued. There's a lot of shadow banning that goes on. And it also kind of feels like that they brought Dana White on board, who is now going to be on the board of Meta, to maybe soften things a little bit with the patriots out there, with those of us who really were censored, who really had our freedom of speech silenced based on the things that happened over the past 4 years. What do you think, Sabrina? Is that a play for us to be like, oh, wait, Dana White's on board. Like, everything's fine now. We're all good.
Yeah, part of me likes to think that Zuckerberg, I almost called him Chad again, sorry, Chad Zuckerberg, really just wants another invite to a front row MMA fight, or UFC fight. But what it comes down to is, I think it is totally a PR move. I think that publicly he is trying to win over the conservative base. So what better way than to bring on someone that is so liked by our community and put them in a position of power over at Meta. So I want to say it's genuine. I don't necessarily believe it is genuine, but I hope it is effective.
Well, I hope at least Dana White scares them a little bit so they don't get funny over there anymore. Like, maybe keep them in line a little, Dana. We'll take that. That's okay with me. It's there's just this sense of relief I think so many of us feel. And look, for whatever the rationale Zuckerberg has, I'm happy to see it. And again, I'm happy to move forward and do things the right way and see the right things happen. I will tell you, one of the things I'm looking forward to most is seeing the end to lawfare. Brianna, we saw 4 years of that against Donald Trump. We saw an unconstitutional raid on Mar-a-Lago, his home. We saw 4 indictments. We saw the Alvin Bragg show trial in downtown Manhattan. And it all came to a head on Friday when Judge Juan Merchan had to, 10 days before a presidential inauguration, sentence Donald Trump. He had him show up, virtually, and he gave him what is called an unconditional discharge. So that means the sentence is imposed without imprisonment, fine, or probation supervision. The whole thing is crazy to me. You have people like Alan Dershowitz saying that the judge revealing the sentence, which we knew this was going to be the sentence he gave Donald Trump before he was actually sentenced, was a ploy, that it was a sham. I don't know why this was necessary, other than, of course, their goal of saying that Donald Trump is the first convicted felon to be sworn in as the president of the United States. Is there any other rationale to this, Brianna?
No, you think about it. If you're in a play and you're acting, right, you finish out every single scene until you get to the end. Lawfare is about show trial convictions. You don't just get a show trial conviction and then just stop there, right? You finish it out. You want to see it through. That's why they had to come out and say, we're not going to give him something. And there's so many people I've seen on X saying, how are we not giving him, years in prison or fine? That's exactly how lawfare operates. It was never about actual justice, because there was justice to be had here. It was about sending a message. And you made one comment. You said, starting next week, lawfare comes to an end. Lawfare can't come to an end. There needs to be accountability for the lawfare that was used against your father-in-law and against every other single Republican. So the use of lawfare needs to end, but there needs to be accountability for lawfare. So we can't take pedal now. There needs to be hearings. We need insight into what happened. And we need to make sure that people on both sides of the aisle are never the victim of this mass smear campaign that your father-in-law was unprecedentedly, the victim of.
Well, absolutely. I agree with you. And let me clarify. What I mean is that the days of utilizing the Department of Justice for political gain end with Donald Trump. He's not going to play that game. He's not into that. He's not going to seek revenge in the sense of revenge. What I do believe he wants to see happen are the right things happen. If you're a person who had your life upended because you happened to go near the Capitol steps on January 6, 2021, and you lost your job, you lost your home, you had everything taken away from you, you've had to pay exorbitant fees to lawyers for all the nonsense, Donald Trump wants the right thing to happen there. And likewise, anybody who played games, who broke the law, and who did things that threatened our country. And really, if you think about what could have happened on the other side of this, had they been successful, it is terrifying. He wants those people to be held accountable too. But it's just about the truth and about the right thing happening. And Sabrina, I think that people are going to be so surprised with the Donald Trump that they're going to receive after January 20th. And I mean this for the folks on the left. The people who voted for Donald Trump know who he is. They understand this man. They understand what he's been through, and they understand the lies that have been told about him. When your life starts looking and feeling better, you have more money in your pocket, there is not an open southern border, we don't have wars around the world, and you feel safer in your community, that's going to probably show a lot of people, you know what, Donald Trump is not this dictator that they said he would be on day one. He has no other reason to be at 1600 Pennsylvania Avenue other than to work on behalf of the American people. And I think a lot of people are going to open their eyes, and I believe he's going to have a very high approval rating, if not the highest of any modern president, on his last day in office in 2029. What do you think?
I completely agree. I'm so excited. We've talked about it on the show before, but there is a major cultural shift, especially even amongst Democrats, even amongst people that were not inherently political before, might be center, might be now a little more right of center after seeing what's happened the last few years. If anything, I don't know how people who are not right of center cannot wake up to the weaponization of our legal system against the former president, soon to be current president. So I just really hope that people wake up and realize that there was injustice completely done to not only him, but so many Americans over the last 4 years, and that better times are ahead. And I'm very excited for next week.
I'm very excited too. We already got a good start, Brianna, because Jack Smith already resigned. Funny how the timing of that works. Did you have any inclination that he might stay longer? Because this was the least surprising thing I've ever seen.
Imagine he did stay longer. Imagine what he would be put on. I don't even know what they would assign him to. Look, his appointments in a lot of these lawfare cases were found to be unconstitutional. Eileen Cannon deemed it unconstitutional. Clarence Thomas said in one of his, maybe it was a dissent, he's not sure if Jack Smith was appointed constitutionally. So I think he resigned not because he just doesn't want to work under a Republican administration, but because he also probably knows that he wasn't supposed to be exactly where he was, and there was something nefarious going on.
Well, we wish him well. Goodbye. Great to see you leave. Don't let the door hit you. Here's the big question that a lot of people have. So after an election, you get like a month of not being inundated with political stuff, and then almost immediately people are like, but there's going to be midterms, but there's going to be 4 years from now another presidential election, and people start getting nuts and they start getting crazy. The DNC, one could argue that they failed epically in this election. You have Kamala Harris with her campaign, who I think still owes $20 million. I mean, they raised $1.5 billion. Somehow they're still in debt. They're still apparently some of the people who were on these like recurring donations are still like, they're still taking money out of my bank account going to the Kamala Harris campaign. But you had the whole team at the DNC sort of be like, yeah, I think we're out of here, the top brass. So a lot of people are wondering who's going to take over, who's going to be in charge of the, not just the DNC, but who's going to be the leader of the Democrat Party. And Sabrina, I don't really know who would want to take this on. This is going to be a really tough ship to turn back upright again, because they have basically ruined their reputation with most Americans. They focused on the wrong things. Nobody wants this woke nonsense anymore. They tried to convince us that there was some joyful, enthusiastic, momentous campaign with Kamala Harris, which was, of course, all smoke and mirrors and all a lie. Who do you think is going to emerge as the leader of the Democrat Party? Any ideas, Sabrina, that you can throw out for us?
To be honest, I think it is a very hard guess to make, just because the Democratic Party is completely fractured right now. And we saw it on our TV screens last week at Jimmy Carter's funeral.
Yeah.
I mean, the tension, you could cut it with a knife between Kamala and Barack, between Kamala and Joe Biden. It felt beyond tense, which we were supposed to believe that she was the most popular candidate that they have had since Joe Biden somehow. But now here we are a couple months later. But I'm very curious to see. I know the Daily Mail did put out an article saying that Wisconsin's Ben Wickler and Minnesota's state chair Ken Martin might be two of the leaders of the party that are emerging, which I do find a little ironic because, you know, this is the party that has pushed DEI hiring down our throats to the point that we ended up with Kamala Harris as our vice president. And now who's here to save the day and rebuild the party? Two white men. It's kind of ironic, and I love it.
Funny how that works, isn't it? Yeah, they have a vote on February 1st, Brianna, and so they're going to vote in whoever's going to be at least the DNC chair and co-chair, however their setup over there works. But this is going to be hard. You know, it traditionally, the midterms, after one party wins the presidency, the other party usually kind of comes out on top of those midterms. They got to get to work over there on the left if they think anything's happening. Like, you got John Fetterman going to meet Donald Trump, which I know just happened. I left Mar-a-Lago only moments after this meeting occurred the other day. A lot of people are kind of changing their stance because I think they went so hard and so far left that they realize Americans don't want any of this. And whoever takes over, you guys got a lot of work to do. And I will say, and I'll very proudly say, we didn't make it easy for you from the RNC because we watched everything. We had 230,000 poll watchers and poll workers. We had 6,500 attorneys all over. So any funny business that maybe people, I'm not saying anybody purposely, of course, Brianna, did any of this stuff in the past, it wasn't able to happen this time. So, I don't know. If I were folks on the left, I might think about maybe changing my party affiliation. But what do you think, Brianna?
Yeah, you said it perfectly. The RNC forced Democrats' hand to make their sole purpose this election to spread a message, and their message sucked. And maybe I read this wrong, but I think it's David Hogg is apparently being considered for like one of the DNC like vice chairs or something. Like people are. Tim Walz tweeted about him the other day, I believe. And if that just is any indication, it's that they have not done the internal review that they should be doing. Because if they're even willing to consider someone like David Hogg, a far left activist who has no idea, I mean, you know, he's wet behind the ears, to help lead the party, they don't actually want to hear what the American people want to say. They want to go into their internal echo chamber, hear what the loudest voices and say, that makes me feel good. I agree with that. I'm going to go with that. And I think you're right. I think they will lose in the midterms if they don't get their party on track. And I don't even think there's enough that they can do to get their party on track because Donald Trump's message is one of populism. Democrats don't care about populism. They care about globalism. So trying to realign the entire party is a very tall task for them.
Yeah, and you know what? This is a time where I can tell you no one is more focused than Donald Trump on getting things done. I asked him the other day about sort of what he thought his legacy was going to be. And it's almost hard for him to answer that question because he says, well, you know what? None of it matters if we don't go in there and do a great job. Like, he wants to hit the ground running next Monday, get things moving in the right direction for this country. And I really believe the change that he can usher in is going to wake even more people up than already woke up for this election that won him the popular vote, 312 electoral votes, the House, the Senate, the whole thing. And so, yeah, it'll probably be an uphill battle for Democrats, but we can never take our eye off the prize. Look, I sometime later this week am going to be voted out as co-chair of the RNC. It's been an incredible thing to have played a small role in all of this, to have been able to serve in the way I did. I'm humbled by all of it. And my time has come to an end. What I came to do is done, and I will be voted out. But I can tell you the RNC is very focused. They're not going to take their eye off the ball when it comes to election integrity, when it comes to staying on top of all the things that we had to do and move in a certain direction this election. We're still going to have a great team over there. Michael Watley is going to remain as the chair of the RNC. So I just want to say thank you to you, ladies. This has to end right now with this segment. And we are just days away from Donald Trump becoming the 47th president. I feel like we've all, been in the trenches together. So thank you both. Thanks for believing in the country and fighting for the country and ensuring the right thing happen. And as always, to both of you, Sabrina and Brianna, thanks for joining us here at The Right View. To everybody at home, make sure you like, subscribe, share, and follow. We'll see you back here next time for more of The Right View.
And I won't back down. Hey, baby, there ain't no easy way out.
Nothing is worse than being on a phone call that drops. Nothing is worse than trying to text someone and you can't reach them because your phone is out of service range. And nothing is worse than supporting these major corporations and companies who don't support us. That is why I love Patriot Mobile. They are America's only Christian conservative wireless network. They use every cell tower out there available to all networks so that they have the greatest 4G and 5G coverage nationwide, and they support the causes that are important to us as conservatives. If you go today to patriotmobile.com/Lara Trump and use the promo code Trump, you will get free activation today. Again, that is patriotmobile.com/Lara Trump. The promo code is Trump for free activation so that you can get a great cell plan and feel good about doing it.